Greetings, my name is Musa Starseed, and thanks for tuning in to the second video all about an introduction to reading astrological charts. In this video, this will be all about identifying the planetary meanings and significations. So let's get right into it. When you observe any astrological chart, what you will see is an array of different planets placed in different locations around a 360-degree chart, right? Each of these planets will have a specific degree, sign, house, aspect, and planetary glyph associated with it. So for the purposes of this video, we'll be focusing on the meaning of the planets, and we'll be identifying the glyphs associated with those planets. These are all necessary skills to have if you really want to interpret any given astrological chart. Because this is an introductory video, we'll only be focusing on the 7 personal planets, which are Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon. These planets are said to have more of a direct influence on our lives because they're the 7 planetary spheres that are most closest to the Earth. In more advanced courses, we'll talk about other things you can identify in the chart, like the nodes of the moon, Chiron, Lilith, the part of fortune, and of course, the outer planets, which are Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. These outer planets are said to have more of a generational influence in our lives. And this is primarily because they move relatively slower than the 7 personal planets, and they're further away from Earth. So now let's get right into it. Let's start with the first planet that we're going to identify, which is Saturn, the most distant planetary sphere from Earth. This is the planetary glyph of Saturn. If you look at it, it almost looks like a cross on the top, bearing a crescent moon beneath it, right? Saturn is the furthest personal planet from the Earth. In that sense, it's said to signify boundaries and limitations. Saturn reminds us of the hard lessons in life and is commonly associated with the god Kronos, the father of time. So in some senses, Saturn can represent fathers in general or authority figures. Saturn is considered an earthy planet that values dedication, hard work, and the grueling step-by-step process of achieving great goals. The phrase for Saturn would be, anything that's truly worth it takes time. You might have heard of something called the Saturn return, right? Well, this represents the time it takes for Saturn to complete one cycle through the zodiac. This time is about 27 to 29 years. And it's said that every time Saturn does this, every time Saturn makes a return in someone's chart, these are moments in their lives where that person must face serious obstacles or responsibilities. Another aspect of Saturn is what's called the 27 Club, which is an interesting phenomenon where famous people seem to die at the age of 27. But Saturn and the Saturn return is nothing to fear. There are positive aspects to Saturn. Usually, wherever Saturn is in someone's chart, that's an opportunity for longevity and the wisdom that comes along with longevity. You see, Saturn brings practicality because of its earthy nature, and Saturn brings a spirit of endurance, resiliency to wherever it's placed in a person's chart. Just to personalize this, let's look over the 2 astrological signs that Saturn rules. Saturn's more feminine light rules over the astrological sign of Capricorn. And this is why Capricorns have such a hard work ethic and ambition to strive and achieve in general, if you know any Capricorns. In Saturn's more masculine light, Saturn rules over the astrological sign of Aquarius. And this governs social structures, friend groups, and governmental societies, and things like collective constructs. In general, Saturn is associated with old age, the elderly, things that move slow, things that take time to mature, tradition, authority, and seriousness. So now what I want you to do is just take some time to draw the glyph of Saturn for yourself and reflect upon these meanings. When you draw these glyphs by hand, it further imprints the symbols into your consciousness. So with each one of these planets, take some time to draw the glyph out if you can. So now let's get into the next planetary sphere, which is Jupiter. Jupiter, this is the planetary glyph of Jupiter. You can see how it looks like a 4, right? It looks like a 4. Or maybe in contrast to the glyph of Saturn, Jupiter is flipped, where the crescent moon is on the top and the cross is on the bottom. You see that? So Jupiter is considered to be the greater benefic, and this is in opposition to Saturn, which is called the greater malefic. And what the greater benefic means is that Jupiter is a planet that signifies faith, good-hearted nature, jovialness, and abundance. But don't mistake Jupiter as being all positive. There's a shadow side to Jupiter's disposition to expand. And this is exactly what Jupiter's main signification is: expansion. But the question to ask is, how far do you expand until it gets into the realms of excess, right? This is the question you have to ask when interpreting Jupiter in any given astrological chart. Jupiter is commonly associated with the god Zeus and is commonly personified as a big-bellied, charitable figure who brings gifts and blesses people. Knowledge is actually very important to Jupiter. Knowledge is primarily the pathway that Jupiter expands itself through knowledge and higher education. Secondarily is Jupiter's ability to have faith. This can be witnessed actually by the 2 signs that Jupiter rules over. Jupiter's more masculine sign is Sagittarius. And Sagittarius are personalities who value higher education, and they value the journey of seeking truth and their things like that. Jupiter's more feminine sign is Pisces, a personality who seeks oneness with the universe, faith, and spiritual awakening and things like that. The shadow side of Jupiter comes into play when we think about how expansion can lead to excess, as I said earlier. This is where we get the radical spiritual dogmas of Sagittarius, the people proclamizing on the street about their religious beliefs. This is an excess side of Sagittarius. Or the tendency to overdo mind-altering substances like alcohol and drugs, which happens a lot with Pisces. This is the excess of Pisces. So wherever Jupiter finds itself in any given chart, that will be an area of growth, expansion, and possibly even potential for excess. But Jupiter's charitable nature gives it a sense of luck and protection, almost as if wherever Jupiter is in the chart, there's a guardian spirit there, or a mentor or a counselor looking out for their best interests. So take some time to draw this glyph of Jupiter and reflect upon these meanings. Now let's get into the next planetary sphere, which is Mars. This is the planetary glyph for Mars. You can see how it almost looks like a warrior's shield and arrow, right? The circle part is the shield, and there's an arrow coming out of it, like a sword or a weapon or something like that. And this is suitable because Mars is the planet associated with war and aggression. The red tinge to this planet, when you look at it in the sky, it makes sense why this planet is associated with fire. Now, a fire, if tamed, can nourish, right? By providing warmth. But the fire's nature is to destroy through transformation. And that's precisely where we get the significations of this planet Mars. Battle, fighting, separation, aggression. These are all the terms associated with Mars. But there's also a positive side to this. Mars gives us our life force. Mars gives us our sexual energy. Mars gives us the vital flame that sustains life within all living beings. Mars gives us the motivation and passion to initiate actions in our lives, to initiate deeds. Mars gives us strength to defend what we value. And most importantly, Mars gives us a sense of direction and a sense of purpose. This can be observed quite clearly through the astrological signs that Mars rules over, which are Aries and Scorpio. Aries, being Mars's more masculine side, are personalities that are naturally born leaders. They're hot-tempered warriors, you know? Scorpio, being Mars's more feminine side, are more emotionally intense and psychologically transformational figures. Take some time now to draw the glyph of Mars and reflect upon these meanings. Now let's get into the next planetary sphere, which is Venus. This is the planetary glyph for Venus. You can see how, in a way, it almost looks like a handheld mirror, right? Where the circle part is the mirror and the cross below is the handle. This is suitable because Venus is a planet that's all about beauty and harmony. The planet Venus highlights issues around our self-worth, our ability to attract, and the nature of relationship dynamics. So Venus is what is considered a lesser benefic, or a lower octave of Jupiter, which is the greater benefic, right? And that Jupiter brings good-hearted nature and expansiveness, like knowledge. Venus brings good-hearted nature to personal topics such as love and body image. This can be seen most potently through the two astrological signs that Venus rules. The more feminine nature of Venus is seen through Taurus. Taurus values the physical senses and experiencing the world through the senses, and values material possessions. The more masculine nature of Venus can be seen through Libra, in which Libra values partnerships and maintaining harmonies between polar opposites. Now, everybody goes to Venus for things like money, beauty, luxury, but the shadow side of Venus presents a certain superficiality that can distract or even seduce and manipulate the average person based on the carnal senses and desires, right? When we talk about Venus, we want to make sure we supplement Venus with substantial foundation beyond how things may look on the surface. The phrase, "not everything that glitters is gold," stands here in relation to the shadow side of Venus. So now take some time to draw the glyph of Venus and reflect upon these meanings. Now, moving into the next planetary sphere, Mercury. This is the planetary glyph for Mercury. You can see how it looks identical to Venus. It just has horns on the top, or maybe a helmet or something like that. And these horns fit well with the significations for Mercury, primarily for Mercury's dubious reputation Mercury is considered the planet of the messenger and commonly associated with the god Hermes. And we all know how messengers have a tendency to play both sides of the fence, right? This is also appropriate for Mercury because it's said to be an androgynous planet, not having a clear masculine or feminine, but Mercury has the ability to adopt whichever planetary influences are nearest to it. Mercury is often associated with electronics, transportation, business, language, and mental processes in general. This is because Mercury governs all things related to communication and the exchange of information. This is precisely why when we hear about Mercury retrograde, for example, we are told to be more aware while we're driving or to watch out for misunderstandings and technical difficulties and things like that. Mercury is definitely a planet that's associated with the intellectual sphere, thoughts and mind processes. This can be seen through the two astrological signs that Mercury rules, which are Mercury's more feminine side, Virgo. And you can see this in Virgo by how Virgo's personality is. They want to be efficient. They value organization, and they're very studious researchers, right? Mercury's more masculine sign is Gemini, and you can see in Gemini's personality how they have a playful disposition. They're hands-on and skillful, and they're especially skillful with electronics. Mercury in general is considered to be an adaptable planet, and wherever it's located in the chart, it shows a particular person's preferred communication style or how they process information. So take some time now to draw the glyph of Mercury and reflect upon these meanings. The next planetary sphere that we'll talk about is the Sun. This is the planetary glyph for the Sun. As you can see, it's simply a circle with a dot in the center. The Sun is the centerpiece. The Sun is the attention point. The Sun signifies basically identity when it comes to reading the Sun in an astrological chart. And this can be seen through the primary sign that the Sun rules, which is Leo. As opposed to Mars and Aries, which is the war soldier, the Sun signifies the sovereign leader or the king personification. In astrological interpretation, the Sun represents the soul of an individual or the destiny of an individual is meant to step into, This is different from the self-image that may be associated with Venus. The Sun is deeper than that and is a light that radiates from within, just like the sun radiates light from a center source. Wherever the Sun is placed is where the primary attention or the spotlight of someone's life will take place. A poorly placed Sun or negatively aspected Sun can denote someone who's lost. They feel lost in their path or they don't know their purpose. So take some time to draw the glyph of the Sun and reflect upon its meanings. The final planetary sphere we'll look about is the Moon. The Moon is the closest planetary sphere to the Earth, what some may call the gateway to the cosmos. This is the planetary glyph of the Moon, which is convenient because it looks just like a crescent moon. The Moon is a watery, feminine planet and can be mostly closely observed through the astrological sign it rules, which is Cancer, a receptive, intuitive, and nourishing sign. Because of this, the Moon in astrology usually represents the mother, or how a particular person feels and receives nourishment. Wherever the Moon is placed is where we may be most vulnerable or most open to influences around us. The moon represents our childhood and how impressionable we were at that stage of our lives. The moon also gives indications to dreams, intuitive abilities, and psychic understandings. The moon connects us to our unconscious and even the shadow sides of our personality. The changing phases of the moon, due to its quickly changing aspects to the sun, highlight the fluctuation of moods and emotions inside of us, as well as our shifting mental states. So take some time to draw the glyph of the moon and reflect upon its meanings and significations. So these are all the planets that we're going to go over in this video installment. Stay tuned for the next video, which is all about the astrological signs.